I'm Chris with Phoenix Gaming. Today we're going to do a review on Halo Flashpoint. Before we dig into that, we're going to talk about what I'm going to cover on the review, and then we're going to dive right in. What we're going to look at is we're going to look at 4 different things, and we're going to rate them on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1, this is just ass juice, and then 5 being perfection. The first thing we're going to talk about is ease, and I don't mean is the game easy, but more is it easy to get into? Does it do a good job of walking you through rules? Is the rule book structured in a logical manner? That type of stuff. Interactivity, is the game interactive? Are there a lot of mechanics that override another player's ability to interact or play? Does it generally feel like 2 people are playing a game? And then investment, is it worth the investment? Is the game hard to learn? Does it have a high barrier for entry? Is it actually fun? Is there a reason for you to like it? And then fit and finish. Are the models nice? Is the terrain nice? Is everything, detailed? Does it paint well? Things like that. After we do that, we're going to talk about things that I think the game does well. And then I'm going to talk about things that I think the game could improve on. Think of this as like 3 positives and 3 negatives. We're going to do this with every review just so we can kind of see what kind of nitpicks we can find in a game. And, this is also going to just be like a catch-all bucket for anything I see that's either really good or really bad. I did get Halo Flashpoint at Gen Con. It is still on pre-order. It's a tabletop skirmish game. I think it's meant to feel like a Halo deathmatch, like Slayer. It is based off of Mantic's Dead Zone's rule set. I did a full unboxing video, which you can see up at the top. You can click there. And then, we'll dig into this again, but I'm not going to be pulling a bunch of bits out for it. We're going to do a quick overview. Players use Spartans to battle each other on square-tiled mat and an alternating activation system. And then they use command dice to interrupt the flow of the game to give themselves a different action economy. And what I mean by all of this is, I'm going to pick a unit, I'm going to do his actions, you're going to pick a unit, you're going to do its actions. From there, you get command dice, you roll them, and each command die is tied to an action, and then you spend those to get bonus actions. Pretty straightforward. It takes a little bit of time to get used to if you've never really played with anything like that, but all in all, works well. Let's talk about the game's ease. It is pretty easy to get into. The models you just put on the table, there's no assembly. They're color-coded red versus blue, which, again, I love. The terrain is assembled fairly quickly and easily. It is a little fragile, which we'll get into. The rules are fairly well written and organized. The mat, when you flip it over, has a quick start option on the back, and that gives you some 2-on-2 action. And then the margin actually has all the rules that you need to reference for that 2v2. And the game is really straightforward, utilizing keywords and universal special rules. And a universal special rule is just what it sounds like. It's a rule that everybody may have access to, and what it does is it keeps you from getting some weird rule wording. And a great example is like a feel no pain if you're from 40k or fantasy, right? Not fantasy, that's a ward. But in 40k, a feel no pain, you roll a die, if you hit the target number, you negate 1 point of damage. It's just, feel no pain is the rule name, and then they have the rule, and then if an army unit has that rule, it just references the USR. That's what a USR is. My big complaint here is that there's no index, there's no quick reference in the appendix. I understand this rule book is as bare minimum as it could get, but nothing chaps my ass more about a rule book than either not having an index or an appendix. You don't necessarily need both, but when you have keywords and USRs, there's no reason not to put an index in that book. You're talking 1 or 2 pages to add to that book to make it that much easier to navigate that book to find the things that you need. Now, granted, this book's only maybe 15, 20 pages long, but that's not the point. The point is that that's 2, 3, 4, 10 minutes I got to spend digging through a book, looking for a rule, when if there was an index, I could just flip to the back, find the rule, and then go. So again, it's a pet peeve of mine, so that may not be an issue for you, but that right there, it grinds my gears. For ease, I'd give Flashpoint a 4 out of 5. Like I said, there's very minimal assembly. The rulebook makes sense. The quick start guide's awesome. But the lack of index or quick references just makes it a pain in the ass sometimes. Interactivity, like I said, the game is predicated around an alternating activation system. You pick a model, you activate it, it performs its actions. There's two different types of actions. There's short actions, and then there's long actions. You can perform 2 shorts or 1 long, and your shorts are going to be advance, stand up, shoot, and then your longs are going to be sprint or assault. Advance is really just move, and then, sprint is run, whatever you want to call it, and then assault is just fight or melee. You can perform, like I said, 2 shorts or 1 long, and you can't repeat actions. The only way to repeat them is with your command dice. Remember, we talked about those. So you might get a shoot command dice action, which could effectively allow you to shoot twice in one activation. The system should look and feel pretty familiar, as a lot of modern games have moved into a similar system. Wasteland Warfare uses a form of it. Bolt Action uses a form of it. A lot of games use an alternating activation system. And then because everything's measured in squares, there's not really any haggling or fidgeting with the tape measure. When I first played it, I was like, I don't know if I like this. But then the more I played it, the more I appreciated, I don't have to measure to see if you're within 12 inches. It's just, are you within 2 squares? It doesn't matter where in the squares you are. It's just 2 squares. So it makes that portion of the game very clean and easy. Command dice, like I said, they generate bonus actions. They don't count towards your 2 action limit and do allow you to double up on some actions. It's an interesting mechanic, and I could take it or leave it. It's whatever. If you get some real spicy command dice, you could do a lot of damage. Now, granted, your odds of it being that overpowering aren't that good. But all in all, it's one of those where the potential is there. But, it's a nitpick, really, is what it is. But overall, I think the game promotes interactivity and almost always feels like there's 2 players playing a game. Command dice, like I said, they can be a little rough at times, but that's been rare. And again, for interactivity, 4 out of 5. Investment. Is the game worth the time and money to get into? If you're a Halo fan and you like skirmish games, yes. The game does an admirable job of bringing the Halo video game to the tabletop. It's fast-paced, it's fun, and it never really feels like a cash grab. It doesn't feel like Mantic is trying to capitalize on the IP of Halo. It feels like they are people who have played this game and wanted to do it justice on the tabletop. Like I said, in the Recon box, the models are adequate. So if you're in it for the hobby, maybe not the best. If you're not in it for the game and you're a kit bash modeling player, this might not be the best, as it's all just one-piece models, is my understanding. All the ones in the Recon box were one-piece models. The plastic feels kind of meh. So overall, maybe if you're in the hobby side of it, not so much. If you like Halo, like I said, and skirmish games like Dead Zone, Kill Team, Wasteland Warfare, Necromunda, the game's awesome. It's a lot of fun. It's not as crunchy as a Necromunda or Wasteland Warfare, but it's deep enough to give it strategy and complexity and still be fast and moving. Another thing to keep in mind is Mantic's been in business for, 10 plus years? So they're not going to necessarily just up and shut their doors. And as long as this game performs well, they're going to support it. So you always have a gamble when it's a new game. But when you get a new game from an established company like a Games Workshop or a Mantic, it's less of a gamble because they've been around long enough that they have a player base. They understand how to market their games. They understand how to make games that people like. So it's one of those where, again, it's a new game. There's a gamble. But the gamble is minimized when compared to some brand new startup making a brand new game. There's some rumors floating around and not enough confirmations. Elites are confirmed, but I've seen pictures of ODSTs, but I don't know if they were fan-made. And again, maybe Mantic has addressed this, but I haven't seen it. But to be fair, I haven't looked that hard. So I don't know if they're real or not. I don't know if Mantic's come out and said, hey, those aren't real. But my understanding is so far, the ODST stuff I've seen, Nobody's confirmed or denied it at all yet. Maybe there's a bigger battle game, and that's the biggest gamble for players like me. I'm getting into this with the hopes that there's a bigger battle game coming. If I spend money on it and you spend money on it and it sells well, and then Mantic is like, hey, let's make a Halo tabletop game with ODSTs and drop pods and jackals and all these other things, yeah, like, I didn't waste my money because my Spartans can just move directly over. Easy peasy. That's my hope. Now, obviously, that's me. That's a gamble I'm making, and that's fine. I accept that. If that is a gamble you're making, understand that this may not be worth your investment because there's nothing definitive about that yet either. Biggest complaints here, lack of units at launch. Obviously, we got elites coming, but man, elites at launch would have been dope. And again, if you aren't a big fan of skirmish games and you want to play Halo, you're still kind of stuck playing skirmish games. So for investment, again, 4 out of 5, doing really well so far. Fit and finish. So everything in the box is it's adequate. The models are detailed, but they almost have a soft, rubbery feel. The terrain is basically chipboard with printer paper glued to it. I will say it is colorful and detailed, but it just feels cheap. And when I was punching it out, like, I was bending it and breaking it, and I wasn't just like finger blasting it. I was trying to be gentle. You know, the battle mat is paper, but it is very thick and very detailed. The battle mat to me is like the standout of the box. It's very nice. And then, like I said, even the backside with all the detail and the rules on it, very good. The weapon and unit cards, they're cards. They're decent. They're clean. They're durable. They do what they're supposed to do. I do understand that there is a potential for the models themselves to be a little cheaper simply to keep the cost down. The retail on the box is less than $100. It's actually only $75, which is a great price for what you're getting. Just don't expect top-notch models and terrain from the box. I assume we're going to get like a full plastic kit later. And really, the firefight plastic kits would work well with Halo. Overall, for fit and finish, I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5. I really couldn't justify a 3. The detail is very nice, but I couldn't justify a 4 because it just feels cheap, some of it. So let's talk about things it does well. Activations and actions. The gameplay is smooth. I was going to drop an F-bomb. Decided not to. And the basing the rules off the dead zone rules means that there's a lot of crossover that'll make playing one to the other fairly easy. You're going to get players on the table fast. It's great at that. You've got the backside for a 2v2. And that's 2 Spartans versus 2 Spartans, not 2 versus 2 players. So you've got a quick start, minimal assembly. My 10-year-old son and I had it from box to tabletop in about 30 to 45 minutes. And that was with terrain built and everything. And it feels like Halo Deathmatch. You've got a constant flow of actions. You've got respawning. It's a good tabletop version of Halo. It feels good. Things that could be improved. And again, I'm not trying to bitch about it nonstop, but that model detail and feel really could be improved. But I also understand that this may just be the recon box. Like I've said, I don't know. The elites don't have that same look that these do, at least not in the pictures. So hopefully once they start releasing standalone models, we get a nicer plastic and a nicer feel. And if that's the case, I can forgive it. You know, if the recon box just had kind of shittier models just to get everything cheap so that players could get it in their hands for a low barrier or a low cost of entry, I'm all for it. It uses dead zone rules. And I know I just said that was one of the good things, but that's also one of the bad things. A lot of companies, when they make multiple games are just reskinned versions of other games. You know, so like Warlord has Bolt Action and Warlords of Erewhon. And Warlords of Erewhon was just a reskinned Bolt Action from what I had seen. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But it makes it easy to go from one game to the other, but at the same point, or at the same time, what's the fucking point? Why go from one game to the other when I could just play this game because the other game is the same thing, but with horses instead of motorcycles, you know? So it's just one of those kind of weird things. There are some differences. I'm not saying it's just a copy paste, but all in all, it's effectively just a reskin Dead Zone. And again, minor gripe, but put a goddamn appendix or an index in it. I'm sorry. And again, it is a pet peeve of mine. I can't be the only person that feels that way, but if you make a rule book, you are committing some sort of crime against humanity if your rule book doesn't have an index. That's just how I feel. Other than that, most of my complaints are already being addressed, such as, lack of elites, things like that. Before we wrap up, let's talk about some announcements. October 5th in Knox is Knoxtoberfest. It's a big barbecue cook-off. I'm actually running an Old World Tournament and a Blood Bowl tournament. If you play either of those games and want to come, I'm going to put links in the description. Feel free to click on them, register. You don't have to pay until you get there. I think it's 20 for Old World, 15 for Blood Bowl, and all the money gets donated to the nonprofit that organizes the barbecue cook-off that we're going to be, that's hosting us. So that's pretty cool. Outside of that, I think that's going to be it. I'm just going through my mental checklist. Halo Flashpoint walkthrough coming up soon, and we're going to take a look at Firefight Mantic's 40K analog as well. So, thanks a lot. Have a good one.